Have you ever felt that chilling fear? That second when your world crumbles before your eyes? I felt it. I saw the woman I'd loved for 20 years with another man, and my first instinct was to destroy everything. But the pain of betrayal was only the beginning. What I was about to discover was 1,000 times more devastating, and at the same time, the only thing that could save us. This is the story of how a terrible misunderstanding nearly cost me everything and taught me to look beyond what meets the eye. And let's go to the beginning of this story. But first, check if you're already subscribed to the channel, because the next videos will be a series of content that will leave you impressed that my name is Tony. I'm 59 years old, and you know what? I've spent more of my life on the road than on dry land. Driving trucks isn't just what I do, it's who I am. I practically grew up in the passenger seat of my dad, Joe's old red Mack truck. He taught me everything I know about the road, about the weight of a load, and the responsibility that comes with it. I'll never forget the day he handed me the keys for my first solo trip. He put his hand on my shoulder, looked me straight in the eye, and said something that has forever been etched in my soul. He said, "Son, out here on this road, you'll encounter two things every day: dangerous curves and people you can't trust. The steering wheel will save you from the curves, but only God can save you from the people." Back then, I was just a kid. I thought I knew it all. I just nodded, not really understanding the weight of those words. For me, life was simple. Pick up the load, deliver it, and go home. I had no idea how profound and true those words would become. I had no idea that the most dangerous curve I would ever face would not be on any highway on the map, and the person I trusted most in the entire world would be the one to lead me straight to it. I never truly understood what my father meant, not until that Wednesday in October, the day my entire life, my entire world seemed to veer off the road and fall off a cliff. But to understand why that day broke me, you have to understand what I had to lose. You have to understand how it all began. You see, it all started with a girl named Susan. Susan. The moment I say her name, it's like I'm 20 again, standing under the bright lights of the Illinois State Fair, back in '86. The smell of popcorn and cotton candy in the air, the sound of carnival music mingling with the laughter of the crowd. And then I saw her. She wasn't the loudest or the one wearing the flashiest clothes. There was just a light about her, a kindness in her eyes that drew me in like a magnet. She was a nursing assistant, and I could tell she spent her days caring for people. It was in her smile. I danced with her that night, feeling awkward and weird, but she just laughed. When I asked for her number, she gave me that sweet smile and said she didn't give it to just any guy with long hair and a cocky attitude. So I went back the next Saturday and the next. It took me a whole month of showing up at dances around town before she finally wrote her number on a napkin for me. 3 months later, I was on my knees. We'd married young and had absolutely nothing. I mean, nothing. Our first home was a tiny room we rented above a garage. Our furniture consisted of a mattress on the floor, a 2-burner electric stove, and a small wooden table I'd made myself from scrap lumber. I remember carrying her into that little room, feeling a little embarrassed that it was all I could offer. I looked at her and said, "Don't worry, honey. One day we'll have a real house, a big yard, everything." I'll never forget what she did. She simply wrapped her arms around my neck, hugged me tightly, and whispered in my ear, "Tony, as long as I have you, that's all I need." That was the foundation we built our entire lives on. That pure, simple love. For years, every mile I drove, every state line I crossed, every sunrise I saw behind the wheel was for her. It was to turn that promise of a real house into reality. We were a team. She was my home, and I was her provider on the road. It was our sacred pact. But the road has a way of taking things from you. It takes time. It takes energy. And if you're not careful, it starts taking the very thing you're working so hard to protect. And the road, it takes away. But in the beginning, it also gives. And how? It did. Those first years were a blur of hard work, but every dollar earned was a brick in our foundation. We moved from that cramped little room to a rented apartment, and then, finally, the day arrived. The day I held the keys to our own house. A simple 2-story house in a quiet Springfield neighborhood with a small porch and a backyard that was ours alone. To us, that place was a palace. Every can of paint we bought, every piece of furniture we chose, told a story of sacrifice and love. Susan transformed that house into a home, a sanctuary. She had a gift for it, filling it with plants, photos of us, and the smell of home-cooked food. Life was good, truly good. But there was a silence in our house we could never fill. We tried for years to have children, but it just didn't happen. It was a silent pain we shared. Susan cried a lot in the beginning, and I did what I do best. I worked harder. Maybe I was trying to fill that void with miles and freight. Over time, we learned to accept it. But that acceptance changed something between us. We began to live lives that were a little more parallel. And then, on our 15th wedding anniversary, I did it. I bought my first truck. A bright, powerful red Peterbilt 379. It was my dream in metal and chrome. I painted the name The Warrior on the side of the cab because that's how I felt. A warrior fighting for our lives. Susan even embroidered a seat cushion with our names. But that truck, my greatest pride, was also the beginning of the end, and I was too blind to see it. With my own truck, I started taking on bigger freight, longer trips. More money, yes, but also more time away. Missed birthdays. Christmases celebrated over the phone. I justified it all by saying it was for our future, for our retirement. But the truth is, I was running away. Susan grew quieter. The hugs when I returned no longer held that desperate grip. Smiles no longer reached her eyes. When I asked if everything was okay, she always said yes, that she was just tired. And I believed her, because it was easier to believe. Admitting something was wrong would mean having to stop, having to face anything. And I wasn't ready. On my last trips, she wouldn't even come to the window to watch me leave. And even with all those warning signs flashing, I never, not even in my worst nightmares, could have imagined what was about to happen. And even with all those warning signs flashing, I never, not even in my worst nightmares, could have imagined what was about to happen. It happened on one of those Wednesdays that seem like all the others when you're on the road. I just delivered a load of soybeans in Dallas and was on a long drive home to Springfield. The roar of the Peterbilt's engine was the only music I needed. The sun was starting to set, painting the Midwestern sky with those oranges and purples you only see in open fields. I was exhausted, but it was a good kind of exhaustion. The kind that comes before you finally get home, in your own bed next to your wife. About 20 miles out of town, I picked up the phone and called Susan. "Hi, honey. I'm coming. I'll be there in an hour," I said. "But look, I have to leave again first thing in the morning. A good freight to Michigan." Her voice on the other end was the same as always. "Okay, honey. I'll have dinner ready. Drive safe. Love you." Nothing different. Nothing suspicious. The same conversation we'd had hundreds of times. I stopped at a gas station on the edge of town for gas and a quick coffee. That's when the phone rang. It was Tim, my dispatcher. The freight to Michigan had been moved up. The customer needed the load ASAP. I had to leave that very night. Not in the morning. I felt that pang of disappointment. So close, Yet so far, I called Susan again. Hey, honey, look. Change of plans. I have to leave today. I won't even be able to stop by. There was silence on the other end of the line. It lasted only a second, but in my head, it felt like an eternity. Then her voice came, but it was ... different. Oh ... That's too bad, but it's okay. I understand. Have a good trip, honey. Her voice sounded ... relieved. Was it just me? Probably. I was tired, looking for trouble where there wasn't any. I drank my coffee, filled up the tank, and was about to take the on-ramp to the interstate. But something stopped me. I was sitting there in my truck, staring at the city lights, feeling that bitter taste of disappointment. And that's when the idea came to me. A silly, romantic idea. I couldn't go home, but I could at least cut in front. Honk the horn like I used to in the early years. A little surprised to make her smile. So I started the Warrior and pulled out of the gas station, turning onto the main avenue that ran through town. I was just a few blocks from our street, my heart a little lighter, thinking about her smile, completely oblivious to the fact that I wasn't driving home, but rather the scene of a crime. The murder of everything I believed to be true. I was driving toward the scene of a crime. The murder of everything I believed to be true. The main avenue was bustling, as always in the late afternoon. People leaving work, kids returning from school. It was a normal, familiar scene. And then it happened. On the corner of our street, right in front of the coffee shop where we used to have coffee on weekends, the Corner Perk Cafe, my whole world collapsed in slow motion. I saw her, my Susan, my wife of over 20 years, there on the sidewalk. And she wasn't alone. She was holding hands with another man. And it wasn't a casual handshake, a greeting. Their fingers were intertwined, the way only couples do, the way we did. Time stood still. I swear to God, I felt my heart skip a beat, as if my body's engine had stalled. My foot slammed on the brakes out of pure instinct. The Warrior screeched to a halt, its tires screeching on the hot asphalt. A car behind me honked angrily, but I didn't hear it. My eyes were glued to the scene. And that's when the worst part happened. The sound of the truck caught her attention. She looked up. Our eyes met through the windshield. It was just for a second. A single second that lasted a lifetime. I saw it all on her face. First, recognition. Then, absolute shock. And then ... fear. Pure, icy panic. And in a movement that tore at my soul, she let go of his hand and turned away, pretending she hadn't seen me. Pretending I was a stranger. That gesture, that simple turn of her head said it all. It wasn't a misunderstanding. There was no explanation. It was exactly what it looked like. The horn behind me blared again, longer, more irritated. The light was green. I had to keep going, and I did. My hands trembling on the steering wheel, a hole the size of the Grand Canyon opening in my chest. I didn't honk. I didn't yell. I didn't stop to demand explanations. I just drove. Like a robot, I moved forward, out of town, toward the interstate. When I reached the interchange, I glanced in the rearview mirror one last time, as if expecting to see the entire city crumbling behind me. But everything remained the same. The houses, the trees, the sky. The world had just ended for me. I slammed on the accelerator like someone fleeing a fire, trying to leave behind not just Springfield, but 20 years of my life. 20 years. Of memories that now seemed stained, dirty, as if written with fake ink dot. So, have you ever heard a story like this? Did you know it existed? Let me know in the comments if you've ever experienced this, or if you know someone you know who has. I'll help you out in the comments. That 20 years of memories that now felt stained, dirty, as if written in fake ink. I don't know how long I drove like that, blinded by pain and anger, The miles passed by outside the window, but I saw nothing. The only thing I saw was the image of her turning her face away, repeating over and over in my head. When I finally realized it, I was over 100 miles away, and the sun was setting. My cell phone started ringing. Over and over. It was her. I looked at the name Susan flashing on the screen and felt a wave of nausea. I hung up the phone. I had nothing to say. Or maybe I had so much that words wouldn't be enough to convey all the venom. I stopped at one of those big roadside gas stations, an oasis of light in the darkness of the countryside. I parked the Warrior in a secluded corner and sat there, staring into space. It was only then, in the silence of my truck, that I broke down. I, Tony Pereira, 59 years old, a man who'd braved blizzards, deserts, and the most dangerous roads in the country, was crying like a child. But it wasn't just sadness. It was a toxic mix of anger, confusion, and shame. The question burning inside me was, how long? How long had I been played for a fool? All those trips, all those sacrifices I'd made thinking of her, of our future. For what? And the worst ... The worst was that suddenly, everything made sense. Like pieces of a puzzle I hadn't realized I was putting together. The colder hugs, the shorter phone conversations, the lack of enthusiasm when I returned home. They were signs. Signs so clear, but that I, in my blindness as a trusting husband, refused to see. I slept right there in the cab, a deep, dreamless sleep. I woke to the sun beating through the window and reality crashing down on me again, like a ton of bricks. I had a shipment to deliver to Michigan. 5 days of travel ahead. Maybe that was what I needed. Distance. Time to think. The road has always been my therapy. But this time it was different. The pain didn't lessen with the miles. Quite the opposite. Every exit sign was a reminder of what I was leaving behind. And on the second day, near Indianapolis, I couldn't take it anymore. I needed an anchor, someone to tell me I wasn't going crazy. I called the only person I knew I could trust. My younger brother, Sebastian. I called the only person I knew I could trust. My younger brother, Sebastian. He answered on the second ring. "Seb, it's Tony." His voice sounded surprised. "Tony, hey brother, are you okay? Your voice sounds weird." I couldn't hold it in. I told him everything, from beginning to end. Susan's call, the change of plans, what I saw on the sidewalk, the way she turned her face away. Sab was silent on the other end, just listening. When I finished, I felt a relief, like a weight had been lifted. Just saying it out loud, sharing. That pain, I felt a little less alone. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and serious. "Tony ... I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry. This is ... It's too much." I took a deep breath and asked the question I dreaded most. "Did you know anything, Seb? Did you hear anything?" There was a pause, a heavy sigh on the other end. "No, bro, I swear I don't, but I'm not gonna lie to you. The town's been talking for a while now." Talking? Talking about what? His answer was like a knife to my already wounded chest. That Susan was different. More dressed up, you know. Going out more. But no one ever said anything right. Just small town gossip. Gossip. So everyone knew. Everyone except me. The clown. The last to know. I thanked my brother and hung up. And continued my journey. Now with a new feeling mixing with the pain and anger. Humiliation. I drove for days, delivered the load in Michigan, but I couldn't bring myself to turn the truck around and go home. Go back to what? I no longer had a home. I asked him for a week off, something I'd never done in my entire career. He was surprised, but agreed. I stayed in a cheap hotel, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling completely lost. That's when my cell phone rang. An unknown number. I answered instinctively, forgetting my rule about not speaking to anyone. Hello? An older, female voice trembled on the other end. Tony? Thank God you answered. It's Marlene. Marlene. Our next-door neighbor. A sweet lady who saw us as her children. Ms. Marlene, with all due respect, I don't want to talk about Susan. But her voice interrupted me, now choked with tears. Tony, listen. Something happened. Susan ... She tried to kill herself. Tony, she took a lot of medication. She's in the hospital. The ground dropped from under my feet. All the hatred, all the hurt, everything vanished in an instant, replaced by a cold terror. As betrayed as I felt, the thought of Susan ... killing herself ... because of me ... was unbearable. The thought of Susan ... killing herself ... because of me ... was unbearable. 20 years of marriage don't just disappear overnight. Which hospital? I asked, my hands already shaking. I'm going back. I hung up the phone and didn't think twice. I went back to the hotel, threw my things in my suitcase, and left that same night. The trip back was a nightmare. I drove nonstop, changing day for night, fueled by coffee and adrenaline. Every mile I got closer to Springfield was a mixture of anxiety and deep fear. What would I say? How would I feel when I saw her? And the question that kept ringing in my head, why? After 3 days on the road that felt like an eternity, I spotted the sign, "Welcome to Springfield." My town, the place where I'd built my life, and where, a week earlier, it had been destroyed. I drove straight to the hospital. I parked the Warrior in the courtyard and stood in the cabin for a few minutes, breathing deeply, trying to prepare myself for what lay ahead. When I entered that hospital room, the smell of antiseptic in the air, my heart felt like it was going to leap out of my chest. And there she was, lying on the bed, smaller, more frail than I remembered, pale, with deep circles under her eyes. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in a week. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. "You came," she whispered. "I came," was all I could manage to say. I sat in the chair beside the bed, keeping my distance, my body tense. "First of all," I began, my voice harsher than I'd intended, "I need to know the truth. How long has it been?" A tear ran down her cheek. "It's been 6 months. 6 months, half a year. While I was sweating on the road, she was with someone else." The anger came back with a vengeance, hot, suffocating. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice dry. "It's Dr. Miller," she said, not meeting my eyes. "He's my my psychologist." I stared at her, confused. Psychologist? And then she took a deep breath, like someone about to jump off a cliff, and said the words that changed everything. The words that made my world stop spinning for the second time that week. "Tony ... I didn't tell you ... because I'm sick. I have cancer. Cancer." The word hung in the air between us, heavy, deadly. Stage 3 ovarian cancer. I found out 6 months ago. My head spun. It couldn't be true. Why hadn't she told me? "Because I know you, Tony," she said, her voice breaking. "I know how you get. I didn't want to be a burden." And the whole story began to unfold. The secret surgery while I was on a long trip. The anxiety attacks. Dr. Miller, who helped her deal with her fear. And that day, the day on the sidewalk. I had just gotten out of chemotherapy, she explained. I felt sick. I almost fainted. He held my hand to support me. "When I saw you, I panicked. I knew how it would look. When I saw you, I panicked. I knew how it would look. I couldn't process it." Every word she said was like a puzzle piece falling into place, forming a picture I never wanted to see. The sudden weight loss, which she explained away as dieting, the constant fatigue, the trips to visit relatives that conveniently coincided with my longer trips. It wasn't betrayal. It was fear. It was illness. And the supposed suicide attempt? It wasn't quite that. After I left and didn't answer her calls, she became desperate. She took the sleeping pills the doctor had prescribed, but she overdosed. "I didn't want to die, Tony," she said, her voice breaking. "I just wanted to erase that pain." In that moment, I felt the ground give way beneath me for the third time. All that time on the road, devouring miles with my heart full of anger and jealousy, imagining the worst betrayals, while in reality, my wife, my Susan, was fighting a battle for her life alone, and I wasn't there. I couldn't take it anymore. The tears came hard, uncontrollable. Tears not of anger, but of deep pain, of regret. I got up from the chair and sat on the edge of the bed, taking her hands in mine. They were cold, thin, with the marks of chemotherapy needles I'd never noticed before. "You fool," I said between sobs. "How could you think you'd be a burden to me? You're my life, Susan. 20 years together, and you still don't understand that?" She cried too, resting her head on my chest. "Forgive me, Tony. Forgive me for not telling you sooner, for letting you think the worst." I hugged her gently, as if she were made of glass. "There's nothing to forgive," I whispered. "I should have known. I should have been more present." We stayed like that for a long time, holding each other, crying together. They weren't just tears of sadness, but also of relief, of reconciliation. The door to our marriage, which I thought had been slammed shut, was opening again. And I knew in that moment that no matter what lay ahead, we would get through it together. The illness had taught us so much. We learned to cherish every moment. A day without pain was a day of celebration. But most importantly, we learned to talk, to share everything. There were no more secrets. That day, I not only got my wife back, I got myself back. That day was the beginning of a new road for us, one that would be much more difficult, but for the first time in a long time. We were traveling in the same direction. Well, we're almost at the end, but first, I noticed that you haven't liked this video yet. This is very important for YouTube to continue sharing our content, and this way we will continue to help you. So please like this video. It's free, okay? Continuing ... and that new road. It was harder than any highway I'd ever faced. In the weeks and months that followed, our lives changed completely. I talked to Tim, my dispatcher, and explained the situation. He was more than a boss. He was a friend. He arranged short local hauls for me, allowing me to return home every night. I was there for every appointment, every chemotherapy session. I, who barely knew how to boil water, learned to cook meals she could eat. I cleaned the house, bathed her when she couldn't. Chemotherapy is a brutal process. She lost weight, lost her beautiful hair. And me? I learned to make colorful turbans to hide the baldness that bothered her so much. Our room, once a simple bedroom, became a sanctuary of peace. And then, a year. After that fateful day, we were back in the hospital, sitting in the waiting room, awaiting the results of the latest tests. She had undergone all the chemotherapy and a second surgery. She was stronger, but the fear was still there, in her eyes. I held her hand tightly. The doctor called us into his office. He was a serious man, a man of few words. He sat at his desk, looked at the papers for what seemed like an eternity, and then looked over his glasses. "Well, Miss Susan, Mr. Tony," he began. I held my breath. "I have some news for you. The tests show there's no more sign of the tumor. What we doctors call complete remission." Complete remission. The two most beautiful words I've ever heard in my life. I don't know who cried more, Susan or I. We hugged right there in the office, sobbing with joy, relief, and gratitude. We left the hospital hand in hand, like two young lovers. The Springfield sun was bright, golden, as if nature itself were celebrating with us. "What do you want to do now?" I asked. She stopped, looked at me with those eyes that, despite everything, still shone. "I want to go home, Tony, our home, and start over." And that's what we did. On the way, I turned the car around and stopped. In front of that same coffee shop, the Corner Perk Cafe. On purpose, we bought a small cake to celebrate. The sidewalk where it all happened, where we almost lost everything, was now just an ordinary sidewalk, the setting for our new beginning. Today, Susan remains in remission. Her hair has grown back, thicker, with a few gray strands that she refuses to dye. "They're my war medals," she says, laughing. "I still work with the Warrior, but I only make short trips. My father was right. Life on the road is full of dangerous curves. But the most important lesson I learned wasn't about the curves in the asphalt. It was that true love isn't just being together in the good times. It's weathering the storms together. It's holding each other's hand when the road gets dark and saying, 'I'm here. I'm not going anywhere.' And today, when I look at my Susan sleeping peacefully beside me, I thank God for giving me the chance to understand this. And if this story touched you, subscribe now on our channel and comment here where you're hearing this story from. And never forget, those on the road always have a story to tell. Thanks for watching this far. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to keep up with the latest content. See you in the next video.